Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mystery Rift. We're diving deep into the confluence of the inexplicable today, touching on threads from our previous work and setting the stage for the next journey. I promise you, what we uncover will challenge your perceptions of reality and the unseen forces at play in our world. We have a lot to get through, so let's cut the preamble and start working on the evidence. Before we descend into the shadows, I must speak about our upcoming project, Missing 411 National Parks. If you're willing to help us fund this next deep dive, visit Kickstarter.com and simply type in the title. This is how we continue to bring these staggering, unexplained disappearances into the light for everyone to see. Your support is crucial at every level, and your presence here is already a huge step toward that goal. Now, some of you new listeners might ask, why the persistent need for crowdfunding? You see, the last film was a massive success, but the company that acquired our distributor, Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, withheld our royalties. This wasn't just a simple accounting error. It was a strategic move that bankrupted them while leaving hundreds of producers, including us, without income. They essentially consumed the lifeblood of our work to keep their failing corporate body alive. My lawyers warned me that in a bankruptcy, only the attorneys truly profit, and I risked losing the rights to my own films for decades. It was a dark, frustrating scenario that forced my hand. I eventually got the movie rights back, but after they took the revenue from that critical first year, it was pennies on the dollar. So this is why I am back, for only the second time in 8 years, asking the community to help us finance the next essential piece of the puzzle. We are also seeking major outdoor sponsors to join the cause, but the initial response from you, the viewers, has been stupendous. People are coming out and helping in a big way, and I deeply appreciate that immediate collective effort. I want to personally say thank you to everyone who has contributed to the kindness revolution already. Now, let's pivot to the heart of today's mystery, starting with a strange pattern in U.S. airspace. North Carolina is a state that often flies under the radar for paranormal activity, yet Washington State, the #1 state for UFO sightings, has a dark companion. Can you guess which state is number 2? It's Montana, followed closely by Alaska. But the Atlantic coast holds a unique and terrifying secret we must examine. I've repeatedly stated that unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, are masters of stealth when they retreat into the water, transforming into USOs, unidentified submerged objects. In just 1 year, 2013 to 2014, US Navy fighter pilots off the coast of Virginia and North Carolina filed 8 separate aerial hazard reports. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a persistent, silent wave of encounters that the media initially ignored. Later, in March of 2018, F-18 fighter groups had 4 distinct encounters off North Carolina at 20,000 feet. The pilots described the objects as drone-like, a deliberately simple term for something far more complex and unnerving. The shift in military attitude is telling. Pilots are finally comfortable reporting these events, which years ago would have guaranteed the end of their careers. The Atlantic Ocean in this region is constantly fed by freshwater systems, and as I've hypothesized in the UFO connection, this is the key. The easiest route for a powerful USO to traverse the U.S. undetected would be underwater, utilizing vast, deep aquifers and inland waterways. The Navy itself has documented USOs passing submarines at blistering, impossible speeds. This raises a terrifying question. If these entities can be entirely stealthy, why, at times, do they allow themselves to be seen? Why risk exposure unless the intent is not reconnaissance, but rather calculated observation, or perhaps even a form of contact? Their deliberate appearance might be a signal we are only just beginning to decipher. This brings us to the Cape Fear River, a 90-mile waterway connecting the Atlantic Ocean to Fayetteville, a town we've discussed recently. The name itself is a grim nautical warning, derived from the hazardous, shallow, and swiftly changing conditions where it meets the sea. This place of peril is where our investigation into a modern mystery must focus. Just prior to this show, we discussed the unsettling case of Clint Bonnell, a 50-year-old Green Beret sergeant who vanished in 2025 near Fayetteville. His home backed right up to a creek feeding into the Cape Fear River. We asked, what if an elite soldier, trained to handle any threat, put his wallet down and stepped outside to investigate an odd sight, only to disappear completely? My instinct was to investigate Clint's case further, but you, the community, immediately pointed me toward the crucial, connecting piece of the puzzle. You asked me, how is it possible that a sergeant in the Green Berets, a man of profound skill and physical discipline, could just vanish without a trace? The answer may lie with another man, and a truly bizarre event, right on the banks of that very same river. Our story now focuses on Chris Bledsoe, who was 41 years old when he disappeared near the Cape Fear River on January 8, 2007. I want to tell you straight up, I believe Chris 100%. The location is unsettlingly close to Clint Bonnell's home, a mere 10 miles away, suggesting a geographical nexus for the unexplained phenomena. Chris's story begins in 2001, when his thriving home construction business, catering to soldiers at Fort Bragg, was shattered by the events of 9/11. The soldiers deployed, and his business imploded, leading him to the brink of financial and personal ruin. 6 years later, he was facing bankruptcy, desperately struggling to feed his family, fishing to survive. On that fateful day in January 2007, Chris and a group of friends went fishing at a spot on the Cape Fear River. In his profound despair, Chris separated from the group and walked into the thick North Carolina woods, reaching a small hill. He was contemplating the unthinkable, standing at the absolute bottom of his personal barrel. In that moment of ultimate crisis, Chris screamed into the sky, a raw, desperate plea for help directed at an unknown power. Whoever is up there, help me. He never expected an answer, but the cosmos responded instantly. 2 tangerine-colored orbs appeared, hovering about 150 feet above the ground near the hilltop. As the orbs began to move toward him, Chris turned and ran. When he finally slowed down and looked up, a terrifying red fireball orb was directly above him. He had asked for a response, and he received one that fundamentally broke his reality. When he got back to the fishing hole, his friends were frantic. They told Chris he had been gone all night, but to him only 20 minutes had passed. This massive discrepancy, a classic signature of the missing 411 criteria, represents a terrifying block of missing time. His son, who had searched for him, was crushed, bewildered by his father's vanishing act. They had driven back home, but the encounter was far from over. Chris states that almost every single night since that January 8th incident, these luminous orbs have been seen near his house. His public claims drew the attention of the highest-level agencies, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and NASA, all of whom came to interview him and stayed on his property. Chris now has over 2,000 videos documenting these recurrent manifestations. What's even more compelling and defies any simple explanation is that Chris is a very religious man who can pray and summon the orbs to him. Footage exists from the crew of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch confirming this phenomenon. To dismiss his claims is frankly obscene. But why do they come? Why him? What is the unseen contract that binds him to these non-earthly visitors? Many organizations have visited his property, verifying his ability to call these objects through prayer or intense focus. The comparison here is with Dr. Stephen Greer, who, through meditation, also claims to summon UAPs. Both Chris and Greer state unequivocally that these objects, these entities, are not dangerous. A neuroscientist who studied Chris stated he has some kind of established, non-traditional relationship with these entities. When asked what the summoning felt like, Chris said it was like being in church. His brain somehow connects to them telepathically. This brings up the unsettling idea of implants, common in historical alien encounters. Does Chris have some kind of internal device that acts as a beacon or receiver? If he can attach to them telepathically, it's as simple as turning on a radio and tuning into a favorite station. Years after the primary incident, Chris had another strange encounter with a figure he described as an angelic female. She delivered a chilling message. His encounter with the orbs was his burden, and he must bear it by talking about it publicly. If she was one of them, why would they impose a burden? Perhaps they didn't just save his life from himself. Maybe they initiated a form of forced destiny. The profound trauma of his disappearance and subsequent contact was the mechanism that broke his suicidal cycle, redirecting his energy to this new, mystifying mission. The ordeal saved him, but his story is the price. His credibility was once put to the test when Colonel John Alexander, the author, visited his home. Alexander had only seen a UFO once in his life. While they were talking, Chris interrupted their conversation and said, "They're here." Immediately, a bright, luminous object appeared right above the house, staying long enough for both men to witness it before it shot away like a flash. This was no accident. If these beings could read Chris's mind and know his credibility was on the line, their perfectly timed appearance served to validate him. They elevated him to a believable UFO chronicler, using Alexander as a high-level witness. This suggests a pattern of deliberate, almost manipulative contact designed to shape human perception. Now, let's revisit the undeniable overlap with the missing 411 criteria. Chris had a clear point of separation from his group in the woods. The entire event occurred right on the banks of the Cape Fear River, ticking the water proximity box. And most critically, he experienced a massive span of missing time. Finally, there is the common dark thread of a health condition. Chris was battling a severe case of Crohn's disease, an inflammatory bowel disease, at the time of his vanishing. This fits the pattern perfectly, suggesting a physiological vulnerability that somehow correlates with these strange events. The three-letter agencies that visited Skinwalker Ranch also found their way to Chris's house, confirming the importance of his location and his account. Did these enigmatic orbs, whether angelic, demonic, or simply extra-dimensional, intervene to save Chris's life? We can only speculate. His act of praying seems to be the trigger, a form of spiritual or emotional resonance that the phenomena are attracted to. Regardless of the classification, Chris has found a new path, emerging from bankruptcy and despair into a life of purpose. I truly appreciate those of you who brought this case to my attention. The collective knowledge of the Mystery Rift audience is unparalleled. If you have a family member who has disappeared, please remember the critical step is to obtain the original missing person report for any investigator to review. And as always, remember to spread kindness, even while you are pondering these deep, difficult questions. Speaking of difficult questions, one last thought before we go. The persistent rumors that Chris's son also had an encounter that night remain vague, but they suggest a family-level connection to this mystery. The Cape Fear River, the missing time, the chronic illness, the powerful UAPs, and the proximity to the Clint Bunnell case. The rift in reality seems to be wide open in North Carolina. Would you like me to look into the rumors about Chris's son's potential encounter during the missing time?